On the evening of February 5th, 1997, Richard Aderson began the 40-minute drive from his office as a school administrator in Orange County to his home in LaGrange, New York. Shortly after crossing the Newburgh Beacon Bridge on eastbound I-84, Richard and an unknown motorist had a minor collision, which prompted both drivers to pull off to the side of the road, presumably to assess the damage and exchange information. But had the collision been the result of road rage, they may have stopped to assess blame and at the very least voice their displeasure with each other's driving. While a number of passing motorists did report observing two men arguing on the side of the road, no one witnessed what would play out only moments later. At approximately 6 p.m., the unidentified male shot Richard once in the chest. He then returned to his vehicle and quickly disappeared into the darkness of the winter evening. Aderson was left to crawl back to his own vehicle and call 911, where he was able to provide the make, model, and color of the fleeing vehicle. He identified a New Hampshire license plate, although it's unclear if he was able to provide any plate number. And according to New York State Police, Aderson described the shooter as a middle-aged white male, approximately 6 feet tall, having a slight build, a receding hairline, and eyeglasses. Tragically, Richard Aderson may not have known it at the time, but he was describing his killer.
I know this case. Why are you telling me about it?
That's how I started off the first episode of Slim Turkey. I told you last week.
So Lee Purchase is a true crime podcaster.
Yeah, I mentioned that. I had to hide behind Lee Purchase so I could do the podcast while I was still working.
A cop doing a true crime podcast under a fake name? That's either brilliant or a disciplinary hearing waiting to happen.
The higher-ups never officially gave me permission to do the podcast. It just sat on this inspector's desk waiting for him to sign it. But they didn't say no either, so there was no disciplinary action.
Lee Purchase got away with it. What about Carlos?
I was actually good with being Lee Purchase. In a lot of ways, he kind of protected me from any of the criticism I got in the reviews, you know? Lee Purchase doesn't know what he's doing is a lot easier to read than if someone said that I was terrible.
What did the reviews say?
They were mostly good, at least on Apple Podcasts, but I go straight for the negative ones. Some people didn't like that I used sound effects, and one person called me a shock jock, which, after listening to it again, is fair. I was finding my voice.
What was Slim Turkey?
The podcast was my investigation into a 1997 unsolved homicide in New York.
Richard Aderson.
Yep, Richard Aderson. And I've always been fascinated with cold cases, so I wanted to start the podcast with one.
Why that one specifically?
It was the perfect place to start. It was relatively close to home, and it wasn't getting much attention after 20 years. I knew there'd still be people out there associated with the case that I could potentially talk to, and I really wanted to get it out there again.
Did you have access other investigators wouldn't?
No, but I didn't go into it expecting that I would. It wasn't anywhere near NYPD's jurisdiction, so I had no access to any records. You know what a FOIL is.
A Freedom of Information request. You file it, they're legally required to answer.
I had to FOIL everything.
But you knew how to read what you got.
Yes, but so much had been redacted. Officially, it was still an open case, so I had to dig and find people who would talk to me.
Who talked to you?
I found a few. It's funny because people talked to me more when they thought I was just a podcaster, but they stopped talking to me when I mentioned that I was a cop doing it as a hobby.
That's backwards from what you'd expect.
Yep, especially from the state police.
What happened with the state police?
So this is something I didn't share on the original podcast. I spoke with 2 investigators from the troop that investigated Richard Aderson's case, but they weren't the original investigators from 97. I told them about the podcast, and I asked them if they could tell me anything new about the case. I knew that the New York State Police had shared information with Unsolved Mysteries 20 years before. I think the biggest thing I wanted to know was why they hadn't released more of the 9-minute 911 call.
Did they give you anything?
Nope. It was a man and a woman, and I met with them in a small room. The guy was nice enough, but the woman, she was a higher rank. She was condescending. And while we're talking, she said something about New York State procedure that just wasn't right. I wish I remembered what she said. But it was something that she didn't have to say, and it rubbed me the wrong way. So I told her I was on the job so that she knew that I knew she wasn't being straight.
And that's when it changed.
Oh, yeah. Her demeanor changed immediately. She was annoyed that I didn't tell her before that, and it basically ended the interview. But she had to get this little dig in before I left, and she asked if NYPD allowed tattoos as she's staring at my sleeves. Then she made a comment about the New York State Police having higher standards.
In the middle of a conversation about a homicide?
In all fairness, the conversation was already over by then, but she was super charming.
But that's the moment you remember.
Oh, I have a lot of memories of the whole experience.
Start with one.
For one, meeting Richard's son, Dave, and just talking about his dad was really special for me. Hearing about them going to Yankee games together, his dad teaching him judo ground moves. He told me this one time when Richard got kicked out of one of his basketball games because he was arguing a foul call. That was something my mom would do. My mom did, and it made it personal for me.
How old was he when his father was killed?
8. He said he had to be the man of the house after that. 8 years old.
Did he ever get any answers?
I don't think the family has gotten answers. It's still unsolved, right?
As far as I know, yes. Still unsolved.
I really hope that the podcast would have triggered someone's memory or give them the courage to finally come forward with some information.
What did Dave think about you doing this?
I think he was happy that someone was trying to get more attention on his dad's case. I was pretty motivated to take a shot at it. I even convinced Mr. Slim Turkey to help me.
Who was Mr. Slim Turkey?
He was my little brother, another Carlos.
Not blood.
No, but we acted and fought like we were blood.
What was he like?
As a co-host or a friend?
Both.
Carlos did the podcast because I asked him to. That's just how he was. He was that guy that 3 or 4 of his friends called their best friend, and I was one of them. At the time, he had so much shit going on, so we kept his part small. He gave the civilians' perspective on things, but he was there mostly for moral support.
What does that mean on a true crime podcast?
I don't know. I just liked having him on the show. What do you think it meant?
It means you were the cop reading the evidence, and he was the person asking why any of it mattered. That's a better show than 2 cops.
I wish it was that structured. He wanted Slim Turkey's nickname to be the Yonkers Love Chicken. It made no sense, but it was hilarious, so we kept it. We were all over the place.
What were you talking about?
We talked about the event itself, about road rage and cold cases. I just meant you never knew what side we'd take. Before this week, I hadn't listened to the podcast in about 5 years, maybe more. I'm really happy he did it with me. It was good to hear him again.
What did you hear when you listened?
I heard Carlos laughing a lot. I really wasn't prepared for that. He passed away about 3 years ago.
How long had you been friends?
Probably over 25 years.
What do you miss most about doing the show with him?
His surprising insight. I spent so much time preparing for the show, and Carlos would just come in unprepared and somehow have the smartest observation in the room. And his humor.
Give me an example.
Okay, so the original investigation led the New York State Police to Manchester, New Hampshire, because Richard described the shooter's vehicle as this green Jeep with New Hampshire plates during the 911 call.
What happened in Manchester?
There's a reporter there named Sissy Taylor from the Union Leader newspaper who was heavily invested in the story. I think she wrote 11 articles about the homicide over a 1.5-year period.
Did she know something the state police didn't?
You know, I never got the chance to ask. She died in an accident in her home in 2012.
How does a reporter who owned a story for a 1.5 years just die in her home?
There weren't a lot of details about it, but she reportedly fell down her stairs and she died as a result.
A fall down the stairs. That's the kind of thing nobody questions.
I would have. But what made the whole story strange, especially to Carlos, was the last article the union leader published about Richard Aderson's case wasn't written by Sissy.
After 11 articles, someone else gets the last word? Who?
Some overnight reporter who mostly repeated the police statement saying that the guy that New York and New Hampshire investigators were questioning had been cleared.
So the one reporter who chased it for 18 months doesn't write the article that closes it. A night shift fill-in does, and all he does is read the police statement back.
Exactly. I actually tracked him down in Australia, and I interviewed him for the podcast. He told me he verified everything before publishing it, and I believed him.
But Carlos didn't.
He immediately wanted to know why he never called Sissy Taylor. If anyone would have wanted to get a word in on that final article, it would have been her. And I missed it.
That's the question that doesn't go away. The reporter who wrote 11 gets skipped on the 12th, and nobody picks up the phone to tell her.
Carlos noticed little things like that all the time. Things I'd missed because I was just too focused on all of the technical shit. And he just listened like a regular person.
You were reading the case. He was reading the people in it.
I thought we made a pretty good show.
You did. 2 cops would have made a case file. You and Carlos made a show.
Big C and little C.
2 Carloses. So which one did people actually listen for?
Well, he had his own turkey sound effects with every intro and a drunk turkey theme song whenever he said something that was ridiculous.
He named himself the Yonkers Love Chicken and walked in with sound effects. You prepared for hours. He just showed up and stole it.
He made the show better. What are we naming this episode?
Mr. Slim Turkey.
Both parts 1 and 2?
Part 1 is Mr. Slim Turkey. Part 2 names itself when you get to Manchester.
I want to talk more about Richard Aderson, too. We sort of lost sight of him.
Same time next week?
And I don't want to wait a week. Same time tomorrow?
I'll be here. I don't have anywhere else to be.